Our next question is about the national debt. Many Tea partiers and Republicans have been emphasizing that we need to cut spending to fix the national debt. Do they have a legitimate concern that spending is out of control? And if you would cut spending, what would you prioritize to cut? Steve?
I think the solution to this issue has been misfocused. The important thing for us is to stimulate this economy first and make sure that we get the debt under control. The 5 most prosperous years in the country were 1994 to 1999 under the Clinton administration after he balanced the budget. So there is an important long-term goal to get ourselves moving in that direction. But right now, the foreign bond markets still have confidence in the United States. They're still buying our bonds. You want to make sure that you demonstrate you have a long-term plan to get to a balanced budget. And you actually have a better chance of doing that if you stimulate the economy now so that we get middle income Americans back to work and paying taxes and buying things. And that is the key for us. So we need to stimulate the economy right now. We need to take a look at the tax loopholes that are out there. And if I'm elected to Congress, I would look at every one of the tax loopholes and make sure that they're actually providing the benefit that the loophole was originally created for. We need a fairer tax structure. I don't think there's any question that when Mitt Romney is paying less than 15% of his income in taxes, while teachers like yourself and electricians that are paying higher, we don't have a fair tax structure. And I think if we have a fair tax structure, we have a good review of loopholes that will go a long ways towards solving the deficit problem. In addition to that, I think that you have to constantly, when you're working in government, you have to constantly be looking out for inefficiencies that creep up in the system and trying to push to make government more and more efficient. I feel proud of the fact that I have a track record at the Board of Supervisors for 10 years of really pushing for us to deliver more and more services more efficiently. And as a result, in spite of the fact that we're doing much more, we have a larger population, we have more mandates that have come down to us from the state and federal government. We don't have any more general revenue employees than we had 10 years ago when I came. I just want to be real clear. We have some new employees where we have big grants, like the mental health funding brought millions of dollars to the county and we had to hire. But when it comes to the general fund, we've been able to find more and more ways to streamline. So I think that we go after the budget by stimulating and showing the world that we have a long-term plan to get ourselves a balanced budget. But it is short-sighted to hamstring our ability to stimulate the economy right now.
David, what would you do about the budget deficit?
The budget deficit is a huge problem, as is our national debt. And I look at our national debt as a tax on our children, and it's not something we should be passing on. Our children already can expect to have a lower standard of living than their parents for the first time in this country's history. So I think we, as the current generation, need to tackle these problems and deal with them now and not just pass these on to our children. Now, the national debt that we have right now was caused by tax cuts for the wealthy, for occupying other countries, and for bailing out corporations that were too big to fail in an economic crisis. So, and now the Republicans are crying out that we need to cut back on social services and we need to cut back on Social Security, Medicare, and other things. And that's where I have a real difference with the Republicans, is that we're not going to balance this budget or lower the debt on the backs of the elderly and the disabled and our children. We need to deal with it responsibly, and there are ways to do that. Cutting back on bring our troops home, cutting back on what we're spending on defense is a good way of doing it. Our healthcare system is literally bankrupting us, and we need to examine what we're doing with healthcare. So there are a lot of ways that we can look at lowering our national debt and getting the budget back balanced like it should be, without doing what the Republicans are trying to do and try and use this manufactured crisis to push their agenda.
David, what would you do?
Brian, it's no mystery here. It's not a surprise. We spend more than we bring in this country. And until that changes, we cannot continue to go at this pace. Just like a family that sits home, a husband and wife and does their budget at the end of each month. It has to add up. It has to work. And I'm concerned that the two sides have gone so extreme that Republicans are not talking with Democrats and Democrats are not talking with Republicans, and Democrats just want to cut defense and Republicans want to just take it to Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare, that we're not going to be able to find an agreement, and we might have to do something drastic. I mean, we might have to do something across the board, 15% cuts across the board everywhere. Our soldiers in Afghanistan, they need to come back. We can't afford this war anymore. And so this needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed right away. We can't continue going at this pace.
The next question is about Barack Obama's health care bill. The ACA, or the Barack Obama's health care bill, that's sometimes known as Obamacare. What problems do you see with it, or what improvements would you make upon it? David?
The only problem I have with it is it didn't go far enough. As I mentioned, our healthcare system that we have today is quite literally bankrupting us. I sit on the foundation board for Simi Valley Hospital, and we're currently trying to raise $3 million to expand the emergency department. Why? They're overrun. They're overrun with people that are really sick that don't have health insurance. They didn't get well care and they waited till they got really sick, and essentially the emergency room doctor became their primary care physician. It's the most ridiculous system you could ever imagine. And what's worse is that these bad debts then get added to the hospital overhead and don't get passed on to insurance companies because they have contracted rates. These huge bills end up getting piled on to multiple times the actual cost of procedures and get handed over to people that had the misfortune of being both sick and underinsured. And that's the reason why 60% of bankruptcies in this country are caused by medical bills, and it's a system that has to stop. So we need to keep pushing the direction that we're going with healthcare reform until we have universal coverage, everybody has health insurance, and we actually bring the cost of healthcare down. We're spending more than 15% of our GDP in this country on healthcare costs. And you look at other countries that have taken a more humane approach, making sure that all of their citizens are covered, have spent somewhere between 8 and 10% of their GDP. We're talking many hundreds of billions of dollars that could be saved by having a more sane and a more humane system for our health care in this country, and that's where I think we need to go with health care.
David, what would you do?
Well, the Affordable Care Act, I think, was a very good thing, but we got to remember something. Most of the provisions do not take effect until 2014. So we're still trying to figure out what this is and what it's about and what's going to work and what's not. So I think everybody needs to be a little bit more patient with it. But what we've seen so far from it, I like what I've seen. The pre-existing conditions for someone like myself who has 4 kids and has a child that has a pre-existing condition, we were always constantly worried about if our coverage gets dropped or we have to move coverages that someone would not be able to be picked up. And that feeling of being held hostage is not a good feeling. So we need to do, I think that was a good thing. And then raising the age from 22, I think, to 26 to stay under a parent's coverage also is a very good thing. So I'm saying we have to be a little bit more patient with it, and let's wait till 2014 and see how this plays out.
Steve, what would you do?
I think there's a few things that I want the voters to really understand about my values when it comes to this issue, and that is that no one in the United States should be denied access to health care because they couldn't afford it. No one should go bankrupt or lose their home because of their medical bills. And everyone should have access to affordable, quality health care. And if I'm elected to Congress, I will not rest until I achieve those 3 things. I will be after those 3 things. I'd like to point out a program and point out the fact that on the Board of Supervisors, we're responsible for the health, welfare, and safety of all the citizens of Ventura County. That means we spend a lot of time dealing with the issue of our uninsured. We're one of the few places in the country that opened up a second hospital, Santa Paula Hospital, about 5 years ago. We have more than 23 clinics in the county, and we have been able to improve dramatically access to health care for people that are insured and uninsured without increasing the general fund contribution to our health care agency because of pushing efficiencies, et cetera. And a program that I think can be a model for us to look at, because I think the Affordable Health Care Act simply has more improvements that have to become part of that. It was a push and a step forward, but there was lots of resistance to keep it from being as comprehensive as it needed to be to get the job done. But we have a program called the ACES program in Ventura County, and it bypasses the insurance company directly. It gives money to the county healthcare system to take care of to provide a medical home and decrease the issues that David Pollack was just talking about, which is people going into the emergency room because they have no place else to go. We have over 10,000 people subscribed in that program that had no insurance, that now have a medical home, get preventative care, they use our emergency rooms less, and I think that's a very interesting model for us to look at, and I know that Congresswoman Lois Capps has been looking at it carefully. She spends a lot of time on health care in Congress, and it's one of the things that I would certainly try to bring our experience and my experience as a member of the Board of Supervisors with all of the ins and outs and challenges that we've had trying to take care of all the uninsured people in Ventura County to Washington.